leadership team meeting. I don't think we have anyone new here, so we'll jump right into our first agenda item with Nikki Hart-Brinkley regarding GIS. Nikki.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. I am Nikki Hart-Brinkley. I am a GIS consultant, and today we'll be talking about a GIS roadmap that I've been talking about and planning with some of you. I have had the pleasure of coming to the county and meeting one-on-one with some of you and your staff. Others I have met virtually. So for those of you I have not met, it's nice to meet you. I am going to share my screen here and see. Okay, can everybody see my presentation screen here?
Yes. Okay,
great. So like I said, I am a GIS consultant. I support counties and cities throughout Oregon. I'm based here in Jackson County, where I also support Jackson County GIS. One of the main reasons that we're here today is because Tillamook County has needed some additional GIS support. That in combination with the fact that your ESRI licensing is going to change pretty substantially next year, IS wanted to take a really close look at the big picture and talk about what options are for the coming year. So our agenda today, we're going to be looking at a brief overview of the GIS roadmap document that I've created. We will also be looking at options for the coming year and talk about next steps. So a GIS roadmap is a strategic planning document. It examines how GIS is currently supporting Tillamook County business, and it also aims to identify what's already working well and where GIS could better support your department goals. We'll look at what support is needed to continue leveraging GIS tools and weigh options for supporting GIS in the long term. So in talking with your various departments, looking over your current data holdings, these are some of the current uses for GIS, and I'm really just touching on some of the main ones here. Assessment is engaged in data creation. So they create and maintain tax lot data, which I consider to be one of the most fundamental GIS data infrastructure pieces of information that you have. It, along with a handful of other things, really feeds a lot of the knowledge and decision-making that counties do. And so right now, you've been engaged in migrating to something called Parcel Fabric, which is kind of the next generation of tax lot data creation and maintenance. Over in assessment, you're also using a map tool for appraisers. So it's a map that appraisers are using to take a look at the properties that they are appraising. And we'll talk a little bit more about that because some important decisions need to be made in order for that particular map tool to continue. Assessment also made the Tillamook County web application. So that's the application that is going to be replacing GeoMoose. A lot of you are familiar with GeoMoose. It's been running for a long time. It is a custom open source application that is no longer being supported. A lot of technology has changed, and it's just not within reason to continue to support GeoMoose. So assessment, Wendy in assessment specifically, has created an application that replaces a lot of the functionality that you've grown accustomed to in GeoMoose. And there are some options there for expanding that tool to continue to have it function in the way that GeoMoose does and provides you with surveyor information, things like that. So Public Works, again, you know, you're creating and maintaining some of that critical data infrastructure. So that's road center lines and bridges, bridge conditions, things like that. And they're using GIS to view and extract data, to answer questions about what's going on, what needs to be repaired, what falls into, you know, different areas where grant opportunities are available to fund repair and maintenance of roads, things like that. Community development is doing frequent analysis. So one of the main uses of GIS is in your community development departments, because you can't answer questions about what should be done on a particular piece of land without a lot of GIS data. So GIS is really fueling a lot of the questions and answers that are being asked and answered over in community development. The surveyor's office has long used GeoMoose, and again, you know, circling back to that web application that Wendy has created, there are some opportunities to link up the surveyor data with her application. So we'll be looking at some options for that as well. And then your county commissioner's office, Rachel is using desktop GIS software to answer questions that she has about spatial data. She has a background with GIS, and so that's been a great tool for her as well. So in talking with your departments, there are some future goals as well, things that you'd like to see happen but are not currently happening. An assessment. There are some new tools that could be leveraged to do field appraisals. So the map that I mentioned earlier, the map tool that's currently being used, that's for internal use. It's not available when you're offline and out in the field and actually doing field appraisals, but it could be. And likewise for Public Works, field data collection tools can be created. And Gregory's been working hard to develop some prototypes for that over in Public Works. You can also edit data in the field, and you can also do work assignments. So you can actually assign workers to do particular projects and then keep track of where folks are at and how they're progressing in their work day. Community development is going to need continued frequent analysis, and there are some additional tools that can be created so that the questions that they ask frequently are in a really easy to use, user-friendly application. Surveyor, again, we'd like to expand the application functionality to include surveyor records. County Commissioner's Office, communicating with the public and stakeholders. One of the reasons that I got into mapping was because maps are kind of universal. Everybody loves a map. They convey information really clearly, very well. And there's a lot of opportunity for communicating with the public and communicating in a way that's transparent. So there's a lot of room for growth when engaging with the public and stakeholders through GIS. Potential additions. So one of the things that I see used really well is in GIS is parks amenities. Again, maps are great for showing off all of Tillamook's many amenities. And so there's some very, kind of low barrier, low cost ways to highlight some of the trail systems, beaches, parks, things like that. And just in general, we want to make sure that we're enhancing the training and technical support for GIS, both within the IS office to keep things running smoothly, and making sure that current and new staff have access to grow their skills through GIS. We also want to explore improved sharing and maintenance for that critical data infrastructure. We can create an open portal that has things like tax lots, site addresses, zoning, things like this that GIS users across the state are often interested in querying your data for. So we can talk about doing an open data portal for you as well. I have to put in a picture of my favorite dog. We had the chance to experience the entire Tillamook coast over the summer. So Sunny's here checking out some interesting things in Manzanita. Your current conditions. So your Esri license. Esri is the main GIS vendor, and you currently have an enterprise standard agreement, which provides you with some desktop licenses, as well as access to their cloud-based environment. It also includes unlimited viewers in Portal, and I'll get into some of these, what is Portal, what is a viewer license? I'll get into this in a few minutes. But this is kind of an important one because that appraiser tool that I was talking about, your current license allows the appraisers to view that map securely, to log into it securely, to have all of that data stored internally. And the decisions that you'll make about your Esri license will impact the availability of the appraisers to be able to see and use that map. So just kind of hang on to that in your head as we start talking about some of the different things that are available for you next year. So currently, assessment, Public Works, County Commissioner's Office, and myself all are using those licenses, and your data is stored primarily on premises in your internal network with just a little bit of data stored on the cloud. So this is where I'm hoping you won't completely fall asleep. Esri licensing is really complex, I think, by design. And I've tried to boil it down to just the core things that we need to talk about. So one of the primary reasons for discussing the future of your GIS program this year is because next year there's major changes coming to the Esri license matrix. And that is going to significantly impact your software contract. You had a license structure called Enterprise Work Group, and that's kind of like it's a small license that is intended for smaller jurisdictions, and that is sunsetting. And Esri is kind of billing it as this, improvement. There's this, new great thing coming, and we're gifting you all of these new bells and whistles. But the way that you're currently using GIS right now, it doesn't benefit the county very much in this moment. However, some of those changes to user types will actually give you some tools that you have been purchasing independently. So it is a little bit of a wash. But overall, it's going to increase your expenses a little bit. So looking at this table, you've really got two options. You can go with what they're calling a revised enterprise standard agreement, or you can migrate to an a la carte structure, which is just buying what you need when you need it. The cost, and these are really minimal costs. We'll get into some potential additional costs here in just a minute, but a really base cost for this revised enterprise standard agreement is about $14,000. I think you've been paying about $5,000 to $6,000 annually, so it is a big increase. Even if we go with the a la carte structure, you're still looking at an increase here about $7,000. The the different licenses I won't get into deeply unless you want me to, and we can take those conversations offline as needed. But what I'm showing here is basically just the core things of what you need to continue to provide GIS services at the level that you currently have them. The pricing on this may be subject to change. These were quotes that were done several months ago, as we was still kind of nailing down some of the particulars for the licensing changes next year. But generally, this is what we're looking at for base cost. So when we're looking at pros and cons of those two choices, the revised enterprise standard agreement, it maintains your current licensing levels. It drops extension costs. Now, what I mean by that is some of the advanced tools that assessment and public works and roads are currently using. It maintains the enterprise portal capacity. So that goes back to the appraisers and how they're using this, the mapping tool. It maintains that enterprise portal so they can continue to use those maps without interruption and without additional cost. And then it maintains the enterprise standard agreement ES for future expansion of services. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, because if you drop the current enterprise agreement, you could be facing some pretty substantial costs down the road if you change your mind. So cons, it will increase your cost from previous year's agreements. And we may need some additional support from either on-premises staff or a consultant who specializes in enterprise architecture for periodic maintenance. The a la carte structure, yeah, it definitely reduces your costs over the enterprise standard renewal. It's really flexible. It's something that I like for a lot of my smaller clients, because we can add things and take things away as needed. And things change over time. Funding changes, staffing changes. So it provides a lot of flexibility. However, it does remove that portal capacity for the appraisers. So if you want to continue to offer that map application, we'll talk about some additional expenses in the next slide. There'll be a bit of an increase in cloud storage, so there'll be some extra costs there as well. Mostly what I want to talk about here is if you end the enterprise agreement and you change your mind, you'll incur a $6,000 a year penalty for each year the enterprise standard agreement was inactive, up to $24,000. So what that means is, if this coming year in 2025, you decide to drop your enterprise agreement, but a couple of years down the road, you say, we really need this new functionality. We don't like the way that the a la carte situation is working for assessment or for roads. We really need that back. You're going to pay, if it was a 2-year hiatus, $12,000 just to get the enterprise agreement back in place. And so in the next slide, we'll look at some of the finer differences. And I think you'll see that the cost savings for an a la carte situation do drop off. So that, again, the base cost, $14,000 or $7,000. Viewer licenses. If you drop your enterprise agreement and you want for the appraisers to have that same map application, you'll need to pay $120 for each of those. So for about 10 licenses right now, this is going to add about $1,200 onto that base cost. I'm going to skip down to cloud data storage. Right now, you're just paying a few hundred dollars a year to do a little bit of cloud storage. I do expect that to increase, probably not more than about $1,000 a year for data storage if you go with the a la carte. So again, it starts to narrow that gap between the a la carte structure and the enterprise standard agreement. Field worker licenses. This is going to be an addition regardless of what you choose. If you decide to have some of those field applications like I'm talking about, where you can go offline and you can have worker assignments and edit data in the field if you're in public works or you're an appraiser, that's going to be about $400 each for a worker license to go out and collect data in the field. So my recommendation is to go ahead and renew with this new enterprise agreement. I don't think that the cost savings between the new enterprise standard agreement and the a la carte system are substantial enough for the trade-off. I think as you progress through exploring different GIS options, I think you're going to want that enterprise agreement. And I don't want to advise you to drop that agreement and then a couple of years from now have tens of thousands of dollars in penalties with Esri just to get back up to the level that we're at right now. I don't want to be that person who you say, oh, we hired that consultant a few years back and she migrated us to an a la carte system. I'm very conservative about what I recommend to my clients, and I recently did a conversion from enterprise to a much smaller system, but that city has a population of 5,000, and so it was really a good move for them. But for you, I just don't recommend that. I think in a few years that could be pretty problematic. So my recommendations for continuing with priority goals, and again, this is just making sure that you can continue to do what you're doing now. Getting continued technical support for GIS administration, creating shared critical data infrastructure, and creating procedures for editing and maintaining that infrastructure, continuing to train staff and migrating to ArcPro. One of the things that's been great about meeting with all of your staff is that everybody's really supportive of GIS. There's a lot of great capacity in your existing staff to continue to learn and use GIS. And so I didn't have to come in and convince anyone that they should be using GIS. There's already a lot of excitement around it. And I think that with appropriate support, that can continue to grow. I'd like to, maintain that licensing for the assessor's office because they are migrating to this parcel fabric migration, which is important on a statewide basis, not just to serve Tillamook County, but just making sure that all of your data is at a standard that will help emergency management and things like this. Down here in Jackson County, we had devastating wildfires in 2020. Two of my clients lost a third of their cities to wildfire. And one thing that you don't want to discover when you do experience a catastrophic natural disaster is that you didn't have some of these core GIS data pieces that are really critical to getting FEMA in quickly and being able to tell them exactly what you lost and where you lost it, exactly what you had and how to get it back. Continuing to support that core GIS infrastructure goes a long way in making sure that you can respond to crisis in as quick a fashion as can be expected. So these things are really important to think about for disaster planning, for emergency management. Let's see. And making sure that all of your departments, whether it's community development, public works, or the county commissioner's office, they've got access to people who can answer questions about grants, about new regulatory environments that come along, and just making sure that either staff or external resources are always on tap to be able to answer those questions. And then areas for growth. Again, creating that open data portal. A lot of counties, even smaller counties, have an open data portal where you can go shopping basically for open data for counties. So again, just being able to find updated tax lot information that's readily available to the public, that can be really important. And it also saves staff from having to answer a lot of questions. So if that information is readily available to the public, they can go on, grab it themselves, and that it doesn't take staff time away to answer questions. Public Works and appraiser field maps, again, just being able to go on the field and collect information, edit it in the field, and just have that automatically update to your systems. Integrating that county map application with the surveyor records, and doing any, kind of parks and recs amenities with public facing applications. Again, as needed support for emergency management and staffing. Like I said, you've got great staff there who's very capable, but we all understand there's limitations to people's days. And GIS takes a lot of constant training to make sure that you're always up to date on the latest, greatest. So I am always in support of more GIS staff, not less. I'd really love to see Tillamook be able to hire a full-time GIS manager in the future. I think everybody agrees that having somebody on site who really understands your changing needs, who's able to engage with you directly and in person, and able to respond to things quickly. Having a full-time person on staff to be able to do that, I think, is the ultimate goal. But we all understand there's a lot of challenges with changing budgets, and if that is not something that's going to be available in the short term, continuing to expand consultant support. I'm a very good generalist, but there are pieces of things that Tillamook County needs regarding your enterprise architecture, and some of the higher level programming that's going to help connect like that surveyor's data to the web application. Those you can consider pulling in a different type of consultant who specializes in those things. So again, challenges. Funding is always the primary challenge. What I would encourage you to start thinking about is how departments can collectively share in the support of GIS. Because even if you aren't using GIS in your department, you are using GIS that the county builds in some way through that, through assessment data, through roads, through community development, those core data pieces that are being maintained by your colleagues are things that you are all using at some point. And so action items, we're meeting here today to review this strategic plan. This is a 6-page document. I don't know if you all have that yet, but it can definitely be made available to you. And I'm available to follow up with one-on-one meetings with all of you, either to refresh the things that we've discussed in the past, either in person or in a virtual meeting, or to talk to you for the first time about some things that you might be considering for use in your department and finding out how you can achieve that, how much things would cost, how much time projects would take. And what I'd like to see you all do is either to establish a working group or make GIS part of your regular monthly meetings to talk about how to tackle the cost of GIS services next year, and to continuously work on a plan, make sure that we're following through with action items so that your enterprise agreement doesn't end and GIS services terminate and then we're scrambling. There's a lot that we can do in the next few months to make sure that the transition to whatever you choose is smooth. And I'm here to provide support for that. And also to set staffing goals. So, you know, number one priority to decide on what the licensing is going to look like next year, and number two, to set the staffing goals. You know, what are you needing in your departments right now? Do you have people that are using GIS? How can we continue to make sure they're supported? And then exploring, you know, a GIS manager or coordinator position. Most of the counties of Tillamook size in Oregon have either a manager or a coordinator position on staff. And so I'd like to see you get back to some of those conversations about how you can support in-house GIS, and also options for continued external GIS consultant support, whether it is beefing up that consultancy to include, you know, consultancy with a bench of, you know, 30 people deep who can provide you with a lot of expanded services, and or continuing with someone like myself who provides generalist services. And so that's what I have for you today. I'm glad to take questions now. I can be available to you for one-on-ones as needed.
Thank you, Nikki.
Anybody?
Does anybody have any questions for Nikki? I have a couple, but I'll see if anybody else does first.
Thank you, Nikki. That was very informative. I did send all of these documents to the leadership team a month-ish ago. Everybody that knows me knows I believe GIS is our future and we need to invest in it. It hasn't happened so far in Tillamook County as much as I would like, and I think it could be used for so many ways. I mean, you talked about it was a map, and it's more of a picture. I mean, it's visual. It shows you so many things that long spreadsheet isn't going to show you. So thank you, and we appreciate all you've done.
Sure, thank you.
I have a question. I remember some years ago during the budget hearings and others conversations, there was conversation about a cooperative agreement, maybe with the city, PUD, and the county, where you could have more resources and it would be parceled out around. Did anything ever happen to that, or is that conversation, do you remember that, Rachel? You probably do.
I do remember that. I don't know if that conversation went anywhere. Under a similar concept or vein, I guess, I had reached out to PUD to see if there was any collaborative that we could work with them on, or if there's support that they could provide for us, and just with their staffing, that wasn't an option, but I don't know if that other interagency cooperative.
I believe Wendy meets with, there's a GIS group that she goes to lunch with monthly, I believe, and as far as any kind of a conversation with PUD or anybody else, I think, you know, we kind of have had Nikki helping, but I still think that's a great idea.
What about the city across the street? What do they do for this type of stuff?
I'm not sure. Nikki, do you know what the city of Tillamook does?
I don't believe that they have robust GIS support at the city. I know that I looked into it and thought, oh, they don't have much, but I'm not sure that they don't have a license. I wouldn't go so far as to say that, but I don't think they're doing a lot. So I think a partnership is an excellent option, and we can certainly talk to the city or others about partnering. We've explored this in the past with a couple of other counties partnering between the county and a city. Esri doesn't like to see that happen because it cuts in a bit to their income when that happens, but it does happen, and I think there are some ways to do it that will not be in disagreement with Esri's licensing structure. Chris?
So, City of Tillamook does have essentially a fledgling program. Manzanita, at least in the public works side, has a fairly healthy program. I'm not sure about the rest of the city, but Manzanita's public works is a little bit more advanced than us.
Great, thank you.
Nikki, apologies if you already stated this in your presentation. When does the county need to make a decision on what they want to do for the licensing renewal?
So this should really be decided around March of next year. We can always do, extensions, but especially with some of the licensing changes, Esri's going to be really anxious to get you switched over to the new licensing types.
Other questions for Nikki? So I also echo Denise's comments. I appreciate all your work. This is the first time we've had, I think, a real thoughtful dive into GIS and a deliverable of what our needs are. And I think the timing is opportune over the next couple of months to, I like the idea of a small work group to work and provide an official recommendation to the commissioners on what they would like to do or on what we should do. The timing will be before the budget committee meetings, but I think we'll still have to make decisions on that. So I would recommend to the board to allow us to proceed with a small work group.
I think that sounds like a great plan. GIS is not an area of expertise for me, and so I think having all the leaders that are utilizing it in their departments, assist us in making the right decision is absolutely crucial. So thank you.
I agree with that also. Nikki, this is Commissioner Bell. Thank you for this presentation. I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged by your presentation. I agree with Rachel that this is more information and more clarity than we've had on GIS in a while, maybe ever. And we've known that it's important, but you said in your presentation that you're a very good generalist, and I second that. I'm really impressed with the presentation and encouraged with the direction that you're providing us. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And I'd love to know what is the image on your photo here, because it's fascinating.
It is a stock image from PowerPoint. I like it because it sort of replicates an irregular triangulated network, which is kind of a GIS-y thing. It involves like digital elevation models and how satellites collect different points of data and how that all triangulates together to create these beautiful landscapes. A crystalline structure taken at microscopic level. That's what Chris indicates it is.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, it's great, and you're right. It absolutely is for what you do.
I thought it was a dental x-ray. Dental x-ray.
Oh.
Christmas tree with lights at kind of a fuzzy angle, but maybe I'm Christmas thinking at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Nikki. I imagine Jeff and I will likely reach out in the future about talking about next steps.
Okay, great. All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Okay, moving along. Sean, budget updates. Update.
So the meeting for next week, the roundtable workshop, not just a roundtable, but also a workshop to bring the budget committee members up to speed on what we discussed at the last leadership team meeting as far as reducing budgets based on unfilled positions so that that spending authority is not there. I'm also hoping to have a little more information from ODF about what they're projecting. Hoping they send that out this week, maybe not, but at least I'll have more information. Our third quarter timber revenue is usually our strongest, so Deborah and I are holding out hope that that comes in higher than what it was, to not have to face the reductions in spending in departmental budgets. It's across the board in the general fund, not holding back. There's also all the changes that we're looking at making with the ARPA funds and the spending of those, so hopefully Rachel and I can get those ironed down and I'll have a better idea next week of where everybody general fund wise or even special revenue fund wise are at. So I'm trying not to be so down about the budget on everything.
And you did it with a smile.
I did it with a smile on a Monday after a 4-day weekend. So yeah, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. We're not the only ones having to do this. I think we're trying to get ahead of it though, and I think we're doing a much better job than some of the other counties, cities, and government budgets.
And the meeting is noticed, the budget committee is noticed for next week.
Yep.
So questions about the budget committee, I would just call it a budget committee meeting. I think the roundtable or workshops have kind of sunset in my opinion, but questions about the budget committee meeting next week?
Is that the only action then is formally adopt a number or something then that recognizes moving the personnel out so that we fill this year's budget?
I would like to get the full budget committee's opinion on it first, then it would go out as a supplemental, a notice as a supplemental budget in the paper, probably a 5-minute meeting. After that, with the budget committee, could be a Teams meeting in Colica.
So that would be, the adoption would be in January.
Yeah,
Around.
and hopefully by then I do have the timber projections. Although I think ODF right now is in an even hotter mess than they were before.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is widely known, but it's possible that some of our union members will come to that meeting and talk to us about how they feel about the budget. And I'm interested in, I've heard rumblings about people feeling insecure about their jobs and fearful, and so I'm interested in whatever they have to say. I don't know for sure if people are gonna come, but I heard that they were planning to come when we were going to have it in November, and it was canceled in November.
Yeah, I've also heard that. I am talking with the unions. I've shared the financial assessment, or excuse me, the financial consultant's contract with them as an FYI. So they're aware of what's going on.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, other questions on the budget update? Okay, well, we have a time certain executive session at 10. I thought that these conversations would go a little bit longer, so I didn't build in the roundtable discussion, but we have another 15 minutes or so if people have other updates to share. Maybe start with the holiday party. That's all ready for Wednesday.
It is.
Yeah.
So I hope you all will come on Wednesday across the street to the Tillamook County Pioneer Museum from 4 to 6. We've done it for the last couple of years. They invite us in. This is the week of their annual Festival of Trees, and they invite us in. They have the big public event on Friday night, so we get the preview, the private county only preview, and we'll have cocoa and cookies and a white elephant gift exchange. Some people will wear ugly sweaters. It's been fun in years past. The museum puts together, the museum director Peyton puts together a really fun, it's sort of like a bingo game, treasure hunt, where she takes pictures of things throughout the museum and then you try to find those pictures, and it's engaging. People have enjoyed it. So I hope everybody will join us. And there's also a delightful list of other things, other holiday activities planned that I don't remember.
I just pulled that email up. I was gonna
Thank
read
you.
them off when you were done.
Please do.
So HR staff have done a great job, pulling together a lot of festivities with other staff this year. So we have the ongoing necessities drive, and if you're wondering where this information is, it's in an email from Mackenzie on November 21st. So Festival Trees Wednesday, Friday, December 13th, holiday potluck, I think in the Stucca room. Secret Santa Week, December 16th through December 20. Thursday, December 19th, decorating contest and the courthouse stroll, and December 23rd, the cookie exchange.
Very nice. I appreciate HR's work on that.
Other updates?
I would love to hear, because we just heard that GIS presentation, I'd love to hear from people your thoughts following that. Like, do you agree that we need a full-time in-house GIS person? And just your reactions to the presentation, starting with Denise.
Yes, and yes.
Yes, yes, and yes.
You know, GIS it has morphed a lot with the technology changes. You know, we had a GIS person in community development, and they were in the assessor's office, and then I think they were back in community development, and then Michael Suits, you know, spent so much of his own time getting GeoMoose to work, and it's been a wonderful application that we've used a lot in our office, and I've tried to encourage others to also, and I think it's probably one of the top hits on the website. We had, you know, when Damien was here, I believe, you know, his office, IS got approval to hire a GIS programmer. It didn't end up being a GIS programmer, I don't believe, and that was not successful. I know that we were supposed to get the portal and the enterprise system, and so that wasn't successful, and that person moved on. So that's been the quandary that I have had over the years is I know what we need for assessment taxation, but I don't know the programming, and there's so much computer stuff that goes into, you know, the uploading and the downloading and how it's done, and you know, Wendy's done a great job trying to keep it all going and keep it all working, because we've had issues where it almost broke a couple times, I think. So, and you know, with community development using it and public works using it, I'm always happy to hear their versions, and they've got some really smart people that know the programs and can use it also. So yes, I mean, I think it's our future. I think there's so much it could do, but there's a big learning curve, and if you don't use it every day, you know, you lose it. So yes.
Thank you.
And we need in-house. I mean, just like I feel with HR and IS, we need in-house people that are specialized in those things that they know and can get us back running quickly.
Thank you. I think Sarah and Chris have their hands up. Chris.
So I agree. It'd be nice to have an in-house person. I think in an ideal world, that would be the case concerning budget issues that we have. I think an on-call consulting specialist would be appropriate, but ideally we would have a in-house person. We do a fair amount of GIS work ourselves, a lot of data collection, and that does help us to identify, problem areas. We do struggle a little bit in data collection because we're fairly unique in that we cannot use cell phone coverage because cell phone just doesn't exist throughout most of the counties. So we do end up talking to some other counties for some of their assistance, but I would say that an on-call consultant would be at least a great start to begin with.
Thank you. Sarah?
Good morning, thank you. So first, I have been working with Nikki for the past several months on some specialized projects, and I have to say her work is excellent. She's very timely, very knowledgeable, and I think she was a great choice for Tillamook County. With that, I think a hybrid approach. I think Denise and Chris both bring valid points to the discussion. What I see is more of a taking GeoMoose, which Denise, as we know, is like shoestring and baling wire put together. And when it crashes, we're in trouble. I think being proactive and putting together, whether it's fixing GeoMoose, if that's possible, or a new user-friendly program, something with Wendy's partnership and collaboration that we can all continue to use, because I think each department has its own unique set of needs and uses GIS very differently. That's one of the great things about it being so diverse, is that we can really leverage that as a resource in all of the work that we do. But I think what would also benefit all of us in every department that uses GIS is basic skill development training. GIS also continues to evolve, which means our skill sets need to evolve and our knowledge base. So having somebody come in, whether it's Nikki or someone else, to give us all that use it some basic training, how to create our maps, how to run basic data, analogs, and then save those larger, more complex projects for that contractor on that as-needed basis, is something that I see could work at least for community development. Thank you.
Thank you.
I also agree with what's been said. I think what Nikki presented is a clear list of things that we do need. And so the next step now is how do we accomplish that within our budget constraints. And I think I agree with that. Sarah, I think a hybrid option is certainly viable. And maybe further down the road, we can justify a full-time, but I feel like we're in a bit of a transition period. And there's likely to be things that are so technical in nature that we will always need to contract out for them. And so continuing to bolster staff and Wendy and anyone who's using GIS, so we can, if we want to, use GIS on our own. For the Commissioner's Office, the program that I've used for 30 years is changing. That's part of this shift, and I don't think it makes sense for me to have GIS anymore. I'll use the web platform, so for what that is worth as part of this puzzle, I'm gonna be letting GIS go. Okay, any other updates from department heads, leaders?
If we are asking people to leave at 10 for executive session, I'd like to ask you to take cake with you.
Well, no, all the leadership team is staying.
The whole, no, good.
Yep, the whole
Okay,
leadership
good,
team is staying, but
good.
please, yeah, I was gonna suggest we recess into executive
Yeah.
session, and when Jenny gets here, we'll just start at 10.
Great, okay.
Okay,
Let
thank you
us
everyone.
eat cake.
I have so much sweets.
I know, right? I know.
It's not a pumpkin cake, is it?